Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Strick.
Bob, thanks so much. It is really great to be here in Wichita. I'm very grateful for your invitation and very appreciative of the warm welcome I've had since I arrived yesterday afternoon. I've seen wonderful things in your city, and I'm looking forward to more. I plan to show a lot of images, and I'm hoping to, with all of that, allow some time for questions, which I would encourage. And I'm also cognizant of the fact that I'm really the only thing standing between you and your dinner. So I'll try to respect that. Our story, the story of the Nasher Sculpture Center, which I really have such pleasure in telling, starts with a couple, Raymond and Patsy Nasher. Patsy was a Dallas native. She grew up in the city, and after graduating from high school as valedictorian at the age of 16, she went to Smith College. And after college, she met a young man from Boston who had gone to Duke, Ray Nasher. And they moved back to Patsy's home, and Ray started to work in the area of real estate. And in 1965, they, along with their then 3 daughters, broke ground on a shopping center called North Park. And actually, I have a question to ask. I mean, first of all, it seems to me everyone I've spoken to the last day or so has told me they've been to the Nasher, and I'm just curious, could I see a show of hands? Okay, so, well, I hope that what I have to say this evening won't discourage those of you who have not been not to come, and won't dissuade you from returning. How about North Park? Okay. Well, North Park was, as I said, was developed, opened in 1965, and it was the largest shopping center in the region, and was something of a pioneer for an indoor shopping center, what we call a mall. And I think it was distinguished by the fact they worked with distinguished architects, modernist architects, and created a building that is really quite beautiful. And this is let's see if, that's a exterior view current interior view. Before I came to Dallas and started working at the Nasher, I wasn't sort of in the habit of singing the praises of shopping centers, but this place is really great. It's really beautiful, and just really speaks to the kind of the taste that the Nashers exercised. So it was very successful, and it still is the largest, most successful shopping center in the region. Something like 26 million people a year go through there. The Nashers, as they were developing their business, began to collect art. And here's a picture of Patsy with some of the pre-Columbian work they collected. They collected also Guatemalan textiles, modern paintings. Here's a Ben Shahn of tennis players, and Ray was an avid tennis player. But in 1967, something important happened, which is Ray had a birthday. And Patsy thought, well, I'll give him a birthday present, and she saw this Jean Arp sculpture, and it was her present to Ray. So Ray decided to return the favor and gave Patsy this Barbara Hepworth. And so they were off. That was that. Patsy had studied art history in college, And she was a real scholar and a sort of a fierce intellect and passionate and very open-minded. And in the early years, the collection was really her baby. Ray certainly supported the effort, but this was really Patsy. And they began to buy at a really quite impressive clip. And I'm just going to show you highlights of the collection that they built over the years, and these are not in really any particular order. They're in sort of rough chronological order by the time they were made and the artist, but not by the time they were collected. So a masterpiece, the Rodin Age of Iron, extraordinary Mother and Child by Medardo Rosso, just amazing wax over plaster. Degas, the spectacular Gauguin Tahitian Girl, two pieces of wood placed together. And parenthetically, we had Kiki Smith speak at the Sculpture Center a few weeks ago, and she was saying that this was one of the most important works that influenced her more than anything. Matisse. And with her scholarship, I think particularly Patsy had the idea of first acquiring important works, and the quality was important, the historical significance, and she really did her homework and researched carefully and hunted works down, but began to have the idea that they could collect not only the breadth of modern sculpture, but really acquire works by certain key artists in depth. So with Matisse, for example, there are nine works. Brancusi, several works in their collection. This work, The Kiss, plaster, they had a pride of place in their home, right smack in the middle of their dining table. And you can imagine the first time I visited, which was in 1986, and I went to dinner in their home, and there you sit down, you get a plate of fried chicken, and which is delicious, and you're munching it in front of the Brancusi. It was kind of a special experience. Gorgeous. Calder, the Spider, from the early 1940s. Max Ernst. Miro, David Smith, another artist they collected in depth. I think there are 10 works by David Smith in the collection. It's The Forest. Picasso, a great collection of Picasso. Giacometti, again, I think 13 Giacomettis in the collection. Henry Moore, and they really made a habit when they could of meeting the artists, spending time with them. They visited Moore in Muchadam. They visited Picasso in the south of France, and I don't know if any of you have noticed at Dallas City Hall, there's a Moore in front of the City Hall. The Nashers have this sort of original, sort of smaller scale work that was based upon de Kooning, lots of de Koonings in their collection, and really, and Dubuffet, Klaus Olderberg, a great favorite of theirs, of the typewriter racer. And it's interesting, this work, we have it on view, and it belongs to a class of object, and I don't think this class of object has a name yet, but it sort of had a certain half-life in the 20th century. I mean, the point is, no young person knows what that is anymore. So, in a certain way, the kind of joke is almost gone, because Tony Smith, wonderful collection of Tony Smiths. Borofsky, a great favorite of theirs, The Hammering Man. Joel Shapiro, another close friend and great favorite. Jeff Koons. And, it's interesting, again, In terms of their collecting, as I said, Patsy was fearless, and Patsy was interested in history, but she was also really interested in young artists. And she bought this Jeff Koons back when no one had heard of Jeff Koons. I think they even placed it outside at one point. It didn't cost any money. It was just this fabulous thing. We get loan requests for it all the time from museums all over the world. Ray was, I think, in a certain way in his collecting, was more conservative. He really wanted the great modern masters. He felt very comfortable with them, and that was his interest in pursuing those. Richard Serra, a couple of great works in the collection. One is in our garden. Another we just put up earlier this last year for the first time. It was terrifying, but but it worked. Beautiful. Anthony Gormley. Marc de Souvreau, they were very close to de Souvreau, and a number of works in the collection. Jaume Plensa, the artist from Barcelona, one of the last acquisitions that they made. And I say they, I should note that Patsy very sadly died in 1988. Ray, though, kept collecting. Really, collecting became his passion. Although he always kept some hand in the family business, it was really mostly passed on to his children. And Ray's great activity was growing the collection. It's important also that it is a sculpture collection. Many sculptors make paintings, they make drawings, and for the artists in their collection, the Nashers wanted to be able to represent all aspects of their work. So, for example, here's a beautiful Picasso still life, Matisse's jazz, beautiful late de Kooning, Dubuffet painting. So by the 1980s, the Nasher collection was coming to get a lot of attention. SMU had done a small exhibition a few years earlier, and in the mid-80s, the Dallas Museum decided to organize a show of the collection and began discussions with the National Gallery. And the National Gallery decided to join the effort, so Washington and Dallas co-organized a survey of the collection, because the collection at that point was regarded as really the finest and most comprehensive private collection of modern and contemporary sculpture in the world. It represented sculpture from the late 19th century to the present day. And it effectively presented a survey of modern and contemporary sculpture, but also, as I've noted, a survey with these sort of mini retrospectives of key artists. So it had the breadth, but it also had the depth. And so both the gallery, the National Gallery and the Dallas Museum were keen to show it. The exhibition traveled, and here, this is the opening of the show at the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid. This is the Queen of Spain. The show also traveled to Florence, and here it is at the Forte de Belvedere, Tel Aviv. This is the show at the Dallas Museum, and at the National Gallery where I encountered it first. And after Patsy died right after the Madrid venue, but the show went on then from there to Madrid to Florence and Tel Aviv. And then, as I said, Ray continued to collect. And even in the 1990s, the collection was shown at the Guggenheim Museum and also the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. And it probably hasn't occurred to you, but when museums show collections, sometimes they have an ulterior motive. And a lot of museums and a lot of places were really interested in the Nasher collection, and they were hoping that perhaps if they exhibited it, that Ray might give them something or might give them everything. And so a lot of time was spent courting Ray, and Ray loved this. He was having a blast. But he, at a certain point, he realized he had to make a decision what was going to be done with this collection, which was really that and North Park were his great legacies, and his children ran North Park, and so the question was what to do with the collection. And, museums from all over were courting, but Dallas was also courting, and the mayor of Dallas at that time, Ron Kirk, who's now just stepping down as U.S. trade representative, he set it as a real priority of his administration to make sure that Dallas did not lose the Nasher collection. Negotiations began with the Dallas Museum, and there was a parking lot right across the street from the Dallas Museum. And so the museum made a proposal, said, well, we'll buy this parking lot. If you give us a collection, we'll buy the parking lot, we'll turn it into a sculpture garden, it'll be the Nasher Sculpture Garden, and we'll operate it. And this is a great offer. And Ray thought about it, and those who knew and loved Ray, they always said, he had many qualities, but being quick to make a decision was not one of them. And he really took his time with important decisions and would not be rushed. So the Dallas Museum, they felt, if they were going to conclude this deal, they had to set a deadline. So they set a deadline, and on the appointed day, at the appointed hour, Ray went in to meet with the sort of negotiating team on the other side, and he went with his daughter. And he said, well, we've made a decision. What is it? Well, we're going to do it ourselves. So Ray and his family, they bought the lot. They commissioned Renzo Piano to design a building. And they decided to create the Nasher Sculpture Center. And you can see from this drawing, the idea of the building was, Piano's conceit was of a ancient Roman ruin. And if you imagine that you're out in the Roman Campagna and you come across a building, or what remains of a building, and the roof has fallen down, the end walls have collapsed, and all you have are these travertine walls, which give a sense of structure. The structure is completely open to the landscape and the sky. And that's what Renzo wanted to create for this collection, a true indoor-outdoor space where indoors and outdoors absolutely were interpenetrating. You see a view from the interior back to the garden, and the entire plot was 2.5 acres. So the building that was created was 55,000 square feet on 2 floors, and the garden is about 1.5 acres. And the roof is this glass roof with a cast aluminum sunscreen over it that is patented, that was designed to capture all of the sky in Dallas that never has sun in it. So the idea is to maximize the amount of light that could enter the space without ever having direct sunlight. It was interesting, again, one of the reasons Ray decided to commission Piano was he greatly admired the Byler Museum in Basel. And Ernst Byler, the great Swiss dealer, was a good friend of his, and he'd bought a lot from Byler. And he was inspired by that. And, as often is the case with the building, there's a sort of give and take between architect and client. And there were several iterations. And the first iteration of piano's design for the Nasher had a roof like the Byler. And Ray had this great Boston accent, and he looked at piano's design and he said, that's great, Renzo, but don't you think you could do something different for us? So piano came up with this idea of the arch ceiling and then the sunscreen, and it's just glorious. View of the garden. And looking back from the into the building at night. The building opened in 2003, and the first director was a man named Steve Nash, who had been a curator at the Dallas Museum of Art and organized the exhibition there, and had gone on to the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. In any case, really focused on the early exhibitions, really focused on works in the collection, masterpieces of the collection, and putting them into just historical context, whether Madonna Rosso, Giacometti's Women, Matisse show, David Smith drawings. And with these exhibitions, really trying to perform a service to scholarship about modern sculpture. And it was Ray Nasher's vision that, yes, he wanted this to be a well-attended and popular, but really saw the Sculpture Center as a place that would encourage the study and the appreciation of modern and contemporary sculpture with a real scholarly mission. And the exhibitions really focused on historical figures, artists in the Nasher collection. I joined the Nasher's team in early 2009. Ray had died in 2007, and one of the first exhibitions that was sort of being contemplated was a show of Jaume Plensa. And Jaume was one of the last artists that Ray acquired, and the notion was it made sense to do an exhibition of his work, but the Nasher had never done a show of a living artist before. And so it was a big step forward for us. When I came, the question was, do we want to do this? I thought, it'd be great to do a living artist. Why not? So we began with this beautiful show of Jaume Plensa, a group of these extraordinary alabaster heads that he did. A show of then Rachel White redrawings, which was the first time we had done a show of a work of an artist not in our collection. And then began really a very active contemporary program. This is a sculpture by the British-American artist Thomas Hausigo, who works in Los Angeles. And it was part of a show called Statuesque, where for the first time we used our garden as an exhibition site. So, for example, the Hausigo stands where normally that Barbara Hepworth's stand, and was there for a few months while the show went on, and now the Hepworth is back. We did a show which was a huge popular success of the British artist Martin Creed. And the most notable feature of the exhibition was this balloon room. Let's see if I can... where the title of the work is Half the Air in a Given Space. And the work consists simply of filling up the room halfway with balloons, and people are allowed to go in. You have to understand, my security team went completely crazy. They hate me, but everyone else loved the show. kids had a blast. I mean, you just couldn't get people out of there. No. I mean, people were scared. Some people were scared, but when we ended up finishing up the show and popping all the balloons, there were no bodies. We had a fantastic show with British artist Tony Craig, who really worked with us on the installation and work done in his last 20 years. And one of the things that gave me great pride when we had the Craig show is Renzo Piano came to visit, and he was delighted. And he said, this show, this is what I designed this building for. So when I told that to Tony Craig, he was very happy. Show of a young Los Angeles artist named Elliot Hundley, who works in the tradition of assemblage, but also the kind of what I call collage on steroids. A group of works based on the Euripides play, The Bacchae. Again, Elliot Hundley. The first show we've ever done of a Dallas artist. We started a series called Sightings, where we invite project series where we invite artists to create new work for the Nasher, oftentimes in relationship to our space. So that was what we did with Martin Creed. Here's a work by by Eric Swenson, a young Dallas-based artist. This work took about 3 years to complete, an incredibly painstaking process, but very beautiful and very affecting. That's kind of scrimshaw patterns that are incised on the head. A fairly recent Sightings installation by a British artist, Irish artist who lives in London, named Eva Rothschild. Kind of phenomenal work that snakes up all around our lobby, goes down into our downstairs gallery, just takes over the space, animates the space in a way that's really that's so much fun and really beautiful, and again had a great response. And a work by a Brazilian artist, again in our Sightings show, actually not a Sightings show, a work by a Brazilian artist by the name of Ernesto Neto, who does these interactive environments. This is a work that stretched from one end of the gallery to the other, and you invite her to take your shoes off and sort of enter there and walk across this, and maybe even sit down there and hang out for a while. Neto titled the work "Cuddle on the Tightrope." And again, it was a really great success. People loved it. It's just sort of a problem if people stayed there too long. And we continue to work with our collection. Every time we do an exhibition, we reinstall the collection. And if we're working with an artist, for example, we ask that artist if there are works in our collection that they would like to have on view, that they feel are important, in some way resonate with their own work. And we also try to pick out themes that are complementary. And it's really one of the great pleasures of working with artists is their pleasure at working in this space, and also in the context of that collection. This is a recent installation we have with Richard Long and Jean Arp on the side there. Klaus Oldenburg and Jasper Johns. This is the show we have on now. This is the California artist Ken Price. Price just died this last year, very sadly, but he was really one of the leading West Coast artists. He worked uniquely in ceramics, and the show was organized actually by the Los Angeles County Museum, and now at the Nasher, and it goes next to the Metropolitan New York. There's been a real sort of a whole lot of interest in Ken Price, and people understand really now what an important figure he was. And I think for a number of years, perhaps largely because he chose to work in ceramics, which was sort of, people thought was sort of a second-class medium related to craft, whatever, so looked down upon a bit. He wasn't given the accord he was due. I think that's really changed. Even Time magazine said in reviewing this show that it's clear that Ken Price is one of the indispensable artists of our time. Well, putting that aside, it's just one of the most beautiful and sort of fun shows you'll ever see. So I would encourage a visit down to see it while it's at the Nasher. We have a sightings show coming up next month. Again, a young artist from Los Angeles named Nathan Mabry. And Nathan does what he calls mashups, where he takes historical works and brings them together with something very different. In this case, he was inspired by the great Rodin masterpiece, The Burghers of Calais. So the bodies are based on Burghers of Calais, and then he's taken college sort of fraternity masks, mascot masks, and cast these together. We're going to install it in the amphitheater in our garden, and I think it'll be great. And then at the end of May, we're opening a show by the German artist Katharina Grosse. And this is a view of actually a show she did at Mass MoCA. What she's doing for us, she's doing there are going to be several parts to the exhibition. In the lower level gallery, she's going to fill the gallery with dirt and paint it. And then paint the walls and paint the ceiling. And then we'll have an object like this filling one of our upstairs galleries. It'll butt right up against the window onto the terrace, continue onto the terrace, and then there'll be another object in the garden. So I think it should be a really spectacular environmental installation. I want to close by telling you about something that we just announced this last week, because this year, in the fall, we begin to celebrate our 10th anniversary. Again, we opened in October 2003, and we were thinking about how should we celebrate this occasion. And a couple of things happened. One, I'd been kind of troubled for a while by the fact that we're a sculpture center and we're supposed to be paying attention to the most significant developments in sculpture. And it seemed to me that a lot of the most interesting work that's being done today is work for the public realm, public sculpture, and that artists are thinking about public work in a really remarkable range of ways. And many of the ways they're thinking about it and the kinds of work they're producing are works that can't be contained within a traditional art museum. So I was sort of thinking about what to do about that. And then I was thinking about North Park, and something I didn't mention, but really from almost the time that Patsy and Ray created North Park, they started to put sculpture there. And not just a little thing here or there, but great sculpture. And if you go there today, there you'll see magnificent de Souvero, gorgeous Joel Shapiro, Klaus Oldenburg, Anthony Gormley, Jonathan Borofsky, and much more. Really just absolutely first-rate examples, and really beautifully displayed. These aren't works in our collection, they belong to North Park, but that tradition has continued. And I thought about that, the notion of placing sculpture in such an unconventional public space was really a remarkable and sort of radical act back in the late 1960s. So what if we take a page and for our 10th anniversary, we commission 10 artists to produce work in 10 locations around Dallas and really try to engage the entire city in a celebration of our anniversary. So we've been spending the last year and a half, almost 2 years, working on this project and selecting the sites And for each site, we have a partner, an organization or entity in the community with whom we're working, sometimes several. And we selected the artists. And last Wednesday, we held a press announcement, and it was a great event. We had the mayor come and the entire city council, and the mayor spoke, and Nancy Nasher spoke, and I spoke, and we introduced the artists. And I thought I would just close by showing we prepared a couple of videos for that event, one introducing the artist and one talking more generally about public art. And I thought I'd just close with those videos. So first of all, you're going to meet the artists.
My name is Lara Almaceri. I'm a Spanish artist. I work a lot with urban transformations. I am very curious about how the cities change and how they develop. I am always looking for places in a city that are gonna change, that are gonna be torn down, that are gonna be constructed. So with my work, I'm always trying to find a way to talk about the past and the future of the constructions in the city. Hi.
My name is Martin Isles. I'm a director of Good Bad Art Collective. For roughly 10 years of our existence, we used the dumpster as a symbol for our group. We've attempted to levitate one of our members in a lawn chair. We've even turned a museum into an apartment building where we had every patron who entered the space, we gave them a surprise birthday party. But we take art seriously, and we love art. We love its possibilities and what it could bring to people.
Rachel Harrison describes her work as a conversation between, in her own words, the museum, the canons of art history, and the supermarket. She's been wary of public art commissions, but is excited to do this project in Dallas. There's humor in her work, and she uses everything from consumer products to found objects to create her abstract works, which we'll see in a public space in this city.
My name is Alfredo Jar. As an architect that makes art, I use the methodology of the architect. And the architect, before acting in the world, must understand the world. The art world, what we call the art world, what we call the white space, the white cube, is a very insular type of place. It's a very privileged space, and it doesn't reach too many people. In order for me to act in the world, I must understand it. And this act is a creative act to respond to a place, to a community, to an issue.
I'm Liz Larner. What you look for is a place that you can connect to, that you think your art can have a response to, build a bridge with. And so when you bring an artwork to that kind of setting, you're kind of opening the space up to something else besides what it was intended for, or what the people that are going there initially intended that to be.
I'm Charles Long. When I do public work, I really want throngs of people coming to see the work. It's exciting for me to see people all over the sculpture and enjoying it. I really want to use the public as part of the sculpture.
My name is Rick Lowe. My interest in producing art is in building the relationships between a wide range of people for creative production that enhance the aesthetics and the creative potential of a community to elevate itself.
I'm Vicki Meek. I do public art projects that are interesting to me. For probably 20 some odd years now, I've been doing work that is involved in looking at the reclamation of Black history and showing the Black community as well as everybody else where we come from, and really hoping that in doing that people begin to understand where they're positioned in the world.
Hello, my name is Ruben Ochoa. I try to take objects that are objects of demarcation in urban spaces, such as like a galvanized fence post, concrete retaining walls, even wooden pallets, and I try to extrapolate them from the original context and reshift their meaning.
Ugo Rondinone is as comfortable creating large-scale sculptures as he is drawing, painting, or working with video or sound. He's known for using naturally occurring objects, such as trees and stones. His work appeals to the viewer's senses and evokes the passage of time. He wants viewers to use their imaginations in the search for meaning. Ugo Rondinone, Swiss artist. One more video, sort of introductory.
In most instances, the artists are the ones that are looking ahead to the future because they're creating new forms, new ideas, new thoughts, and bringing that to the people.
Art kind of gives you a moment to stop and, ponder and breathe and perhaps see a window into another world.
Once you move art out of confined space, it starts to, I think, really live.
I think that getting art outside of museums and galleries is the most alive way to present art.
It's about the interaction between the art itself and the people in Dallas.
You're mesmerized by it. You start wondering why they put this in here. Public art can transform a city, make it new, and inspire people.
The heart and soul of a city is truly the culture. Art is something that we really care for and is a part of our environment.